What's up, swamp folk? Good to see you all here for another upload here in the swamp. Today we're going to be going over some of my all-time favorite stories that I've ever had the pleasure of working on, narrating, or even getting to help write. If you enjoy these stories, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and get ready for some scary stories that'll keep you up tonight. But first, a word from our sponsor. Hey swamp folk, I'm sure, just like myself, many of you have dealt with the terrible tasting greens. I know a lot of us struggle in getting in our veggies, and sometimes the only way to do it is through supplements. And after you've tried a few that are just so bad, you just don't want to go back to it ever again. When was the last time you had a meal that was both healthy and delicious though, and it made you feel good? Have you ever had that same feeling while taking a supplement? Well, now you can with Factor Form. Most of us dread taking our greens, especially drinking it, but Factor Form has changed the game. You'll actually crave your greens for the first time ever. As the sister brand to Factor Meals, Factor Form was designed to go hand in hand with your meals, making better nutrition effortless. Now, I have been using Factor Meals and Factor Form for some time now and have absolutely loved it. As I said, I've tried many other greens and they never tasted great, but the Daily Greens powder by Factor Form will have you looking forward to it, I swear. Just one scoop delivers 100% of your daily nutrients, filling nutrient gaps, supporting whole body health, and helping you feel your best. With a refreshing, citrusy, clean, and smooth taste that's both actually enjoyable to drink and actually feels like you're not drinking something that's super good for you. So, what are you waiting for? Start your day right with Daily Greens by Factor Form at factor75.com/swamped to get 40% off plus free shipping on your first order. That's factor75.com/swamped for 40% off plus free shipping. Factor75.com/swamped.
I'd like to preface this by saying, I know a lot of people might think this is fake, and this statement is me trying to trick you, because this really happened, and I really don't know where else to go. On this computer, I'll explain later, all the normal stuff is blocked, Facebook, email, etc. So I tried every single site imaginable, leading me here. I think this is a good place for it, and I'm not in any immediate danger, so I think it's okay to write the story out in completion. So, let's do introductions. My name is Ty. It's not short for anything. Not Tyler or Tyrone, just Ty. Nice to meet you. I live in the southeast of Pennsylvania, near Philadelphia, but closer to Bucks County. Living in more of a rural area, I've always been fascinated with the woods and nature in general. One thing I've really been interested with is survival. Like living on your own. No commodities or luxuries of modern life. Fending for yourself. Reading up online about this, I found this program called Outward Bound. I don't know if it operates in other areas, but the Outward Bound groups in my area go out into the wilderness as a group of about 5 boys. They camp together and learn skills for about 5 days. Then all the boys go on what's called a solo, where we camp alone, about a mile apart from each other for 3 days. Obviously, since it's the 21st century, we are given walkie-talkies and a map of other campers in case there's an emergency. Even if that doesn't work, we're basically in screaming distance from one another, and the camp leader makes regular rounds around the perimeter of our campsites. It's supposed to be fail-safe, no liabilities. But something happened. Let me first give you a rundown of our group. There was me, my friend Caleb, his friend Marco, and 2 brothers named Brian and David. Those 2 I didn't know that well. Our leader Nick was also with us. Nick was relatively new. This was only his 2nd expedition. The first 5 days went without a problem. It was just normal camping. On the last day we were together as a group, that's when it started. We were all in our makeshift tents, Nick in his bigger and more advanced canopy farther away, and we heard a rustling in the leaves. Big deal, right? That's what we thought too. Brian woke up first. He was the most skittish of the group. I assume he only went because his brother was going. And then he woke up his brother. Them talking woke the rest of us up, and then Brian told us what was up. Obviously, we laughed at him and thought that he was just messing around or being scared. And then, we heard it. The majority of us being people accustomed to the woods and its noises brushed it off. Even after what I've witnessed, I still think it was just a rabbit. I guess we all had trouble going back to sleep after that. So partly to pass the time, and partly to scare Brian, we told horror stories. I don't remember the specifics. I guess I'm just too rattled. But I remember the outline of one that Marco told, mostly because of how it affected what happened later on. It was about a boy who went to wander the forest. One day while walking, he heard a scream coming from the further end of the forest. Coming closer to it, he saw nothing. He finally went to the exact spot the noise seemed to be coming from. He found nothing. Turning back confused and a little creeped out, he saw a wolf. Going up to pet the wolf, I don't know why he would, but a teenager made up this story, so whatever, it suddenly bit him and started screaming. The boy then transformed into a wolf much like that one, and was doomed to lure people into his clutches for the rest of his days. Very bad story if you ask me. After he finished telling it, Marco seemed to scream trying to scare Brian, but at that point, we were all just annoyed. After those 5 days, I was really excited because my most favorite part was here, the solo. We all went out alone, ready to face the woods. The camps were aligned in a straight row from east to west, with each camp being a mile apart, and Nick being in the center. From east to west it went, me, Marco, Brian, Nick, Caleb, and David. The first day was one of the best days of my life, despite what happened that night and morning. I caught a rabbit, cooked it, ate it. I went fishing, climbed a tree, and bathed, and drank from a river. I was a real woodsman. Then, it all went to shit. I don't know when the killing started, or if anybody was even killed, but for me, it started that night around 1 in the morning, if I was looking at the moon right. I went out to take a piss in the stream, when I saw a rabbit wounded on the ground. I thought I could save the trouble of getting my next meal, so I took up my knife and walked ever so slowly over to it. Knife in hand, I creeped over it until I could hear it breathing and plunged my knife down, then felt on my lower leg. The rabbit, as injured as it looked, fucking got away before I slashed it. Luckily for me, I didn't stab myself directly in the leg. I just cut it on the side. There wasn't too much blood, but it was hard to walk. I kind of semi-crawled back to the campsite and radioed Nick. No response. Shit. I had disinfectant with me. I'm not an animal, and the cut wasn't deep, so I knew I wouldn't die or anything. It didn't look like it needed stitches either, so I decided just to wait until morning. I assumed Nick was probably just asleep. I didn't bother radioing the other guys. They couldn't help me. I decided to go to sleep, so I turned my walkie off, another dumbass horror movie on my part. As I tried drifting to sleep, I was awakened by a scream, and I instantly recognized it. It was Marco. And guys, I know you'll be angry and annoyed when I tell you what I did when I heard that scream. I did nothing. But let me explain. Maybe it was my sleepiness or my wound, but I did not think it was a real scream. I thought that since Marco's tent was right near Brian's and that he was trying to scare Brian or something. It was a shitty move, I know, but I couldn't have helped him anyway. I was in no condition to run a mile to go get him. And neither was Brian, because Brian was either scared or Brian was dead. I really don't know at this point. About an hour later, I was still awake. I tried to play it off before, but the pain in my leg was unbearable. The wound was screaming, and I just couldn't deal with it. It was hell. I knew I wasn't going to die or anything, but I couldn't stand the pain at this point. Again, maybe it was the sleep deprivation or the pain, but I decided to go to Nick's camp. I knew he had painkillers in case of an emergency. Earlier, I had gathered sticks to make a fire, which I didn't make, and I grabbed the biggest one and used it as a makeshift crutch. I specifically went around Marco and Brian's campsite because I didn't want to wake them, and I had a pretty good idea of where I was. I heard that average noises in the woods, leaves crunching, wind blowing, but nothing scared me. I needed those painkillers. I kind of tuned out in the middle of my walk. It's mostly a blur now. I remember it was long, and I remember it was painful, but I especially remember getting to Nick's cabin, and I remember his body. The funny thing is, I saw the painkillers first. I think I was dully aware that there was no sound in the cabin when Nick snores like a bear, but I guess in my delirium, I didn't notice or care. I gulped down the pills, and even though it didn't take effect right away, I felt better. Then, I noticed the steady silence that washed over me, and before I saw him, I knew he was dead. His body, it wasn't something any animal could do. I don't think it's something any human could do either, not without heavy machinery. In fact, there wasn't really even a full body there. He was torn to shreds. There was a pool of blood and a pile of mushed up meat. Like if you've ever had made meatloaf, he looked like the meatloaf mix with the milk, eggs, and raw meat all mixed together by hand. He looked like human jello. Not screaming, not even feeling that panicked. I just stared at his body for a few minutes. Then I realized I needed to get the fuck out of there. I wasn't close to Nick. There was no time for mourning. I wasn't really close to any of these people. The closest thing I had to a friend was Caleb, and we only met in the training program. I'm a survivalist, so that's what I did. I survived. Call me an asshole, but I needed to get out of there. Quickly thinking, I took Nick's radio, flicked it on. I heard David's voice screaming for,
"Please help, oh God, please help, it's coming, please help, holy shit, please no!"
I flicked it on to a different channel while scouring the woods. If it hit Marco, and it's on to David, it's moving west, I thought. I immediately flicked on to an emergency frequency and told them where I am. I moved east, that's all I remember. Like my trip to Nick's, it's all a blur. Everything is. First, I was heading east. Then I was in a police cruiser. And then I told them what happened, not holding back, but I should have. They told me they would contact my parents, and that I should wait in his office, where I'm sitting at now. A few minutes before I started writing all this down, about 6 men in suits came in here asking for me. I overheard them talking to the sheriff about me. They're trying to take me. They said how this matter was a matter of national security. I don't know if I'm getting out of here or not. The painkillers are wearing off, and man, it'd be nice to have one right now. I guess that's the end. Do what you want with this story. Brush it off as a nice little horror story and go about your life if you want. I'm real. I hope at least I'm remembered. I guess now is goodbye. Sorry, I don't have all the answers. Hi. For those of you who read my last post, this is a partial explanation. At least, what I've found so far. So, I'm back home now. But I don't have all the answers. As some of you suggested, I just played stupid for a lot of the questions they asked me. I didn't reveal what I didn't think was human. I just said I heard screaming and thought I saw a body. They asked me if I smelled anything weird. I said no. I just thought it was odd that they asked me that, so I put that in there. The men in suits that were there either are running this behind the scenes or were sent away, because I haven't seen them since. The police wouldn't tell me anything, but I figured out some information. So, from what I know so far, there is some kind of monster or alien or serial killer of high priority that attacked my campsite. I know it's high priority from the men in the suits. I saw them flash their FBI badges. I assume it's not a serial killer, because I don't know how we could have mashed up Nick's. I still don't know if that was Nick, but I still assume it was his body like that, without some kind of machine that I would have definitely heard. I don't think a normal animal could have done that, so it must have been something supernatural. I don't really believe in that stuff, but I think something had to have done this. I never actually saw the thing. I kind of want to now. I assume that it's good at keeping quiet, because I heard no noises that weren't human. They kept me in that office for a good 2 hours, and luckily, I deleted the browsing history after I wrote that story, because they came in there and unplugged it and asked me, "Did you go on this?" And I obviously said no. I asked one of them if there was a police report I could read, and she dismissed me immediately. The police called my parents, and they took me home, but before they could, they had a long talk with them that I couldn't overhear. When we got home, my parents told me that we couldn't talk about it to anybody, and try to forget the whole thing. I asked if I could see any of the boys in my group. They said no, I'm not allowed to. I don't really know what's happening. Whenever I ask my parents about anything, they just say, "I know it's hard, but we're not talking about this." After that, they wouldn't even respond if I would ask them. I feel like the whole world is crazy. I checked out all the news sites about this and came up with nothing. Nobody seems to know about it. I was contemplating contacting the local news, but I thought it would make things worse, and obviously I'm not allowed to tell anybody. From now, I guess, I'll just try to go about my normal life. But it's gonna be hard. I'm thinking about going back into the woods to investigate, and even went up to it, but there was police tape surrounding the entire perimeter of that area. I didn't do it, but I'm wondering now if I should have gone under and seen the site. I don't expect they'll keep the police tape up long, really. That will cause suspicion. My leg is doing better. I'm going to the doctor tomorrow. My mom told me if the doctor asked what caused the wound, I should say I was cutting the garden and accidentally cut myself. I tried to call the Outward Bound people, but they said they had no record of my camp group, or of anything of Nick in their database. So I don't really know what to do now. I essentially have no proof of what happened besides my word. I can't even find any of the application papers to join Outward Bound. I don't even have any of the boys' phone numbers or Nick's. How I don't even know any of their last names. I really don't think I can prove any of it, no matter how much digging I do. I feel guilty that I left them all behind, but with my injury, I might have gotten killed too. And one death is better than two, I guess. Honestly, I don't even know if any of them are dead. This is all very confusing, and I don't know whether I should just keep my head down and forget about it, or if I should expose this cover-up. I think the people have a right to know what's happening, and I think I especially have a right to know, since I was involved. What scares me the most is whatever is going on in this forest. If this some kind of monster, I'm a little skeptical on that. How are they going to capture it? Am I safe with my house being right on the edge of the woods? Does it somehow have my scent or whatever? Even though I hate that somebody is trying to cover this up, I really hope they succeeded in catching whatever did this. Do you guys think I should go back in the woods? I think any kind of evidence would have been taken away by now. I don't want to risk getting caught, and maybe being in actual danger. I'm really glad this site exists, so I could at least share my story. I really didn't expect anybody to believe me, because why would you? I hope this is the last story I have to tell, but I'll come back if there's more. I promise. I know one thing for sure though. I definitely don't want to be a survivalist anymore.
Fresh out of high school, my friends and I decided to take one last trip together before we all split up to go to college. The Pacific Crest Trail was the destination. A few nights of drinking, hiking, and camping was exactly what we needed together. Ian, my boyfriend, picks me up from my house. I've never been to the Pacific Crest Trail, so he tries describing its beauty the best he can. Babe, you're gonna love it, I promise. Nothing but fresh air and wilderness. We will be one with nature. I'm not so sure Mother Nature would approve of the ungodly amount of alcohol you have in the cooler. Well, what about this?
Ian pulls out a sandwich-sized Ziploc bag of weed. I know Mother Nature would approve of this. She grew it. You've been holding out on me, I said, snatching the bag from his grip. I open it and take a deep breath, inhaling the familiar aroma. It's a long ride. Might as well roll one up for the road. Sounds good. I'll call the others and get them to meet us at the location. Ian connects his phone on his Jeep radio, putting on his 80s hair metal playlist. I light the freshly rolled joint, and we settle in for a road trip. We decided to meet up at the Bridge of Gods. The Bridge of the Gods sits at the convergence of the historic Columbia River Highway State Trail, 3 National Historic Trails, and the Pacific Crest Trail. We walk over the bridge together, being extra careful because there is no shoulder on the narrow bridge, and we must share with cars and trucks. We make it across with no problem and hike for a while until we decide to go off-trail to find a spot to set up camp by the river. 3 tents between 6 people, Nova and his girlfriend Tessa, the twins, Sadie and Katie, and finally myself and Ian. I sit back with a black cherry white claw and take in the beautiful, beautiful surroundings. The sky let out an orange glow as the sun sank behind the jagged mountains. The mountains came down to meet the cold, untamed river. Nova and Ian began to make a fire before the night came. As the darkness falls, the alcohol flows. The flicker of the flame lights the night. We all reminisce about high school and talk about all that we would like to do for our future. Ian gets quiet and stares off into the darkness that is the river. What's up, Ian? I ask. I think I can see the outline of a boat floating not far off the bank. We all look in that direction. Ian pointed. Yeah, I think I see it too, Katie said. Nova walks over to his backpack and pulls something out. He twirls it in his hand and looks at it for a moment, before putting it in the direction of what we think is the boat. Is that a gun? Put that up, Nova. I spoke. Chill out, Brittany. It's just a flare gun, Ian said as he grabbed my hand to calm me. Nova pulls the trigger, and a trail of light streaks out towards the boat. It lights up the immediate area around the dark outline. It was a boat, not just our mind playing tricks on us in the dark. 2 people stood in the flat-bottomed boat, looking our way. They wore orange hoodies that hid their face. Oh my God, people are watching us, Sadie said. Get the hell out of here, you damn weirdos, Nova shouted. Nova and Ian began picking up rocks on the riverbank and throwing them at the boat. After a few moments, we could hear the engine start and drive away. We finally get over being freaked out. We did our best to put the incident behind us and continued drinking and partying throughout the night before eventually passing out in our tents. I woke the following day to a commotion outside. I unzipped the tent and dragged myself out. The sun hit my eyes and I winced as a sharp pain shot through my head. Drinking obscene amounts of alcohol seems like a great idea until the next day, when you have to wake up with a splitting headache and you get a queasy gut. I see Ian with his hands clasped on top of his head, standing in front of a flat-bottomed boat and sat on the riverbank on our campsite. Ian, what's wrong? What's going on? I ask. These assholes from last night, they docked our boat here, stole all of our supplies while we were sleeping. Nova walks up behind us. I'm having trouble finding the trail. I have some food and water stashed away in my tent. Let's refuel and go look like a group. After eating, with no supplies, we decided to cut our trip short, pack up, and look for the trail we strayed from to get to this riverbank. Let's split up, Nova said. We can go in pairs of 2. Try not to stray too far from the others, so if you find the trail, you can alert the others by yelling. Nova and Tessa enter the woods. Sadie and Katie enter about 20 yards away, and Ian and I do the same. Ian grabs my hand and he leads the way. We say nothing to each other, only the sound of twigs breaking and brush under our feet fill the silence. I think I see something, Ian said. I look around to try and see what he sees, and that's when I notice it. I think we both figure out what it was at the same time by the terrified look we gave each other. To our left, a man in a bright orange hunting hoodie stood several yards away. He didn't move. He just looked at us. A camouflage ski mask covered his face. He didn't move even when we ran into the opposite direction of him.
Even without being chased, we ran as fast as we could, leading to me tripping over some undergrowth and falling. My extended hands were the only thing stopping me from slamming my face into the unforgiving ground. A sharp pain shot through my wrist into my elbow. I let out a yelp in pain. I'm not sure if it's broken, but I know it's at least sprained. The price I had to pay to save my face from colliding with the forest floor. Ian quickly comes to my side, helping me up and inspecting the hand. I held it close to my body. He flexed the wrist, sending a shockwave of pain through my arm, causing me to jerk my hand away. Behind him, I noticed some movement. It was one of the men in the orange hoodie stepping out from behind some trees. I point a shaky finger behind Ian at the man. Ian glances over his shoulder to see what has me so shaken. "We'll check this out later. Right now we have to run." Ian grabs my elbow, careful not to touch my hurt wrist. We make a hard left and quickly make our way to what is hopefully the trail we came in on. We break through the trees, but it's not the trail. It's a small clearing. It looks like someone has recently been here. A still smoldering fire set in the center of the small clearing. Sadie and Katie break through the brush into the clearing a few feet away from where we came in, followed by Nova and Tessa shortly, to the right of where we came in. We all share stories, and they all sound very similar. "These men funneled us to this spot," Katie said. "Why do they want us here? What do they want?" Nova responded. "Well, you did shoot a flare at them," I say to Nova. "The creeps were floating there watching us. What was I supposed to do?" "Stop fighting. It'll get us nowhere. We need to figure out how to get back to the trail," Sadie interrupted. We looked around the clearing. It was roughly about half the size of an NFL football field. There was nothing out of the ordinary other than the smoldering pile of coals left behind. "Let's turn around together and enter the woods and search for the trail. It has to be close," Ian said. We began to walk towards the section of woods we had entered the clearing through, and several of the men with orange hoodies and camouflage masks stepped out of the tree line. We turned as a group and began running in the opposite direction. We got halfway to the other side of the clearing before there were more men wearing the same orange hunting hoodies and camouflage masks stepping out. More emerged from the tree line surrounding us. I'm pretty sure there were 12 of them in total. Some of them had rifles in hand. Our group huddles together as it looked like these hunters were slowly closing in around us. 2 hunters grab the twins, Sadie and Katie, and begin to drag them away, kicking and screaming. Ian and Nova run towards the 2 hunters that grab the twins. Nova throws a punch that connects with the hunter's chin and drops him to the ground. Nova grabs Sadie by the hand to help her up when a loud boom fills the air. The unexpected explosion temporarily disorients me. My ears ring. I look around confused about what just happened and where the explosion came from. I hear Sadie let out a terrified scream. I look to see her coated in blood and Nova lying on the ground beside her. Ian turns around, running away from the scene unfolding before us. The look of fear in his face let me know exactly what had just happened. One of the hunters with a rifle had shot Nova. Ian took about 2 steps before another shot rang out. Blood spray came out of the side of Ian's head like a lawn sprinkler. Ian drops mid-stride, pulls her into the nearest tree line, and I hush her violent screams. No additional words are needed as we began to both sprint away from the chaos. I feel terrible about leaving Sadie and Katie to die. But any other action than what I took would have led to all of our deaths. I could hear the hunters scrabbling after us. At least, that's what was running through my mind at that moment. Tessa and I ran full speed for what felt like miles. My legs burned, my lungs hurt, and I would not dare to slow down. To my relief, we stumbled upon the trail. I look around to regain my sense of direction. "The bridge is this way," I yelled to Tessa, and we began sprinting again. We ran to the bridge, where we flagged down a car, and they called the emergency number to alert the police. I was frantic, trying to explain to the officer what I saw, that we ran off, leaving our friends to die. Tessa could only weep. She tried to tell her version, but she couldn't get the words out. Tessa was physically shaking, and instead of words, vomit was the only thing that came from her mouth. Several hours had passed, and the sun was starting to set when the officers found my friends. The hunters had erected 2 wooden crosses that Sadie and Katie hung from. Their abdomens sliced open, and the twins were connected by their intestines tied together. Their guts decorated the wooden structure they hung from like a set of gory Christmas lights. Ian and Nova lay at the foot of the crosses. I don't know the reason behind the gruesome slaughter of my friends, but I do know I'll never revisit the Pacific Crest Trail.
I've lived in this town all of my life. I know all the weird traditions that come with living in a place as remote as mine, but nothing explains what's happened at our deer park. I used to come out here most evenings during the pandemic, park up by the base of the hill overlooking the sanctuary and just immerse myself in nature. I was always mindful of the distance I had to keep from the deer, particularly during mating season, and it wasn't like the deer didn't know what a car was. These were in their own reserve, sure, but the trail cut right through their vast fields, and they'd grown accustomed to seeing cars all manner of times in day and evening, which is what made the situation much more unsettling. Starting last week, a sign was put up on the entrance gate to the park. Impossible to miss as the cars slowed and the tires rolled over the metal grates. With it being the late hours and very few cars on the road, I decided to stop and read it in full. A polite notice to our valued visitors entering the Oboro Nature Reserve. Our deer are exhibiting unusual behaviors, and we are politely requesting you observe the following guidelines in place as to best protect yourself and the well-being of our deer. 1. While the park is open 24 hours a day, we are recommending visitors do not stop their cars during observable grazing periods and on midsummer nights. You are welcome to drive through and observe from a distance, but please do not slow down or stop. 2. Should you be slowed or stopped at any other time and the deer be curious by your vehicle, act calmly and do not speed up. Let them inspect you and judge you as a safe passerby. If they begin snorting, that is your cue to leave. 3. There have been reports of deer standing on their hind legs and remaining idle in the fields. These rumors are a fallacy. Please do not pay attention to them. 4. There is a black stag that holds dominion over the western herd. His antlers are sharp and his stride is impressive, but do not attempt to approach him. Please pay him the respect you would normally and do not stare at any of the females in his harem. He will charge you. Bucks are not friendly. 5. Deer remember faces. They can recognize you from a distance and will verify your smell as you get closer, listening intently the entire time. There are many of them and only one of you. You would do well to mind that. 6. Lastly, no matter what salacious rumors have been propagating amongst the community, the deer are not congregating in the dead of night. Deer are social animals that sleep and graze together in a herd. This is normal. The deer are acting normally. Drive safely. Keep your doors locked and have a lovely drive in the Oboro Nature Reserve. Strange, right? The notice wasn't your usual steel sign with carefully embossed wording. Rather, it had been hastily marked up and nailed to the wall adjacent to the welcome sign, as if in a hurry. I'd not heard any sorts of rumors around town, and nobody had complained about the deer park at all. We're a population of maybe 2,000, so it's not very difficult for word to get about. Still, I had my routine and intended to stick to it. Some of the info was valuable for newcomers. There was indeed a large buck who paraded the western herd. His name was Jojo, and I fully believed he would gore anyone who outstayed their welcome or got too close. Beautiful specimen of muscle and authority. He ensured his harem would never be straying too far from him, and he seemed to be borderline obsessive about making sure they never went across the eastern side where the large swaths of trees were at. In fact, I'd observed him on multiple occasions actively nudging or ramming younger males away from the split in the road and back to safety. On the rare occasion that a member of the herd crossed the line, he would refuse to acknowledge them and actively keep them away from entering back, as if they were banished. As I drove through the archway, I'd realized I had not seen many deer in the eastern section of the park. Looking out my window and staring at the makeshift forest to my right and a burning question coming to the forefront of my mind that didn't leave as I reached the hill overlooking both sides of the hill. Where are the rest of the deer?
It was, to say the least, unnerving to sit there and try to enact my ritual of riding under a clear night when there was a strict absence of the herd where they should be. I tried my best to focus, but something was just burning in my mind, pulling my eyes back to look at that same spot, time and time again. Eventually, I decided that I needed to get some fresh air and take a better look, satiate my curiosity, and then, with my mind at ease, I can get back to finishing my blog. The air is humid when I step outside. No breeze and the stars are out on full display. Thank goodness for no light pollution in the countryside. I leave the engine running and walk to the barrier my car is parked in front of, leaning over and taking a pair of binoculars I bring for slower days when I want to see the deer in better detail. As I direct my vision to the eastern herd, I see something darting in the tree line. It's quick, hairy, and seemed to move the second my binoculars motion toward it. Even a deer shouldn't be that spooked, especially from this distance. My joints seize up and I dang near drop the binoculars when I hear a familiar snorting from behind me. I turn and see Jojo, standing 15 feet from me, just by the rear of my car, and his eyes gleaming in my rear lights. His head is low, and his antlers are thick, sharp, and aimed at me. In that moment, I don't know if he was going to charge and whether I should be fighting for my life or not. Instead, I do as I was instructed and stay still, not making sudden movements as he snorts again, closing the gap between us slowly. As he gets within 5 feet of me, he rears his head up. I see the most baffling expression on his face for a fleeting moment. Fear. Something ripples through the eastern forest, and birds begin flying away in droves. Some of the deer herd in the western area are circling something, and Jojo immediately bounds down and out of sight to control the chaos. I waste no time getting in my car and driving down after them, keeping the doors locked, the windows open a crack, and my speed at a decent crawl. As I come along the embankment that connects to the road, I see Jojo running full sprint towards another deer. He knocks the rival over and contorts the body as it skids across the grass and falls into the trail just ahead of my car. I know I'm not supposed to, but I stop the car and wait. In a choice between breaking the rules and breaking my car, I choose the former any day. The western herd deer under Jojo's command are gathering behind him, making horrific shrieks of terror. Jojo strides up and bows his head again in front of the still contorted deer, antlers on full display and dripping with black blood. It was a clear threat. Do not come back here if you value your life. I started wondering how I'd safely get this deer out of the way, or if I could mount the grass on the other side and go around it, when I saw something horrific unfold in front of my eyes. The body twisted itself around, and the limbs snapped to reset themselves, the head still cracked at an ugly angle, bones sticking out of the sides as it got into its shaking legs. Then it screamed. It sounded as if its lungs were filled with blood, a horrible muted cry of anguish that backed up every other deer but Jojo. I don't know what was keeping this thing standing, but it let its head flop lazily around as it carefully backed away onto the eastern side of the reserve before bounding into the tree line, as if nothing were wrong. My rational mind chalked it up to the adrenaline and instinct to survive, but it was impossible to shake the feeling that something was entirely wrong. I carried on driving as soon as the deer was out of sight, not looking at Jojo or the others as I carried on down the trail. For the remaining few minutes, I felt unseen eyes staring intently at me until I crossed the threshold and back into civilization. I'd never been more grateful to see other humans. Or my bed. Something about the whole incident just took everything out of me. I was drained of all of my energy. As I slept that night, I dreamt that I was a deer alongside Jojo, frolicking in the herd and grazing peacefully. But as I cast my eyes upward to the sky, a bitter chill on the wind, I saw the moon bathed in an almost purple plume. A strange light cast onto the land and noises rustling from the woods opposite. I don't know how I knew this, but something in me instinctively knew we were not supposed to go there. I saw shapes begin to emerge from the trees, and that same horrible shriek rang out again as I woke up in a sweat. I leaned forward to catch my breath and grab a glass of water. As I changed positions to reach for my nightstand, I swear I heard something running up the trail to my house. I was probably still half asleep, Maybe just imagining it, but that didn't make it any more unnerving. I decided it would be best to drive out the next night and confront my concerns head on, take the bull by the horns, or the deer by the antlers. If I'm not going to sleep soundly, then I should use my time wisely and document what I'm seeing. Maybe pass it to the rangers in the morning, right? When I drove back out there last night, the atmosphere was vastly different. A mist was enshrouding the trail, and most of the deer on the western side were huddled together, shaking and staring intently at the other side of the nature reserve. I couldn't see Jojo anywhere. Strange, I thought. Alpha males patrol their herds dutifully. Why wasn't he here? I parked up at the usual spot, making sure he wasn't around. I pulled out my binoculars again and stared at the eastern area. The clouds beginning to part as the moon shone through. There was movement all along the tree line as shapes began emerging one by one. I think it took my mind a moment to process what I was seeing. I'd finally seen the deer on the eastern side. But they were wrong. Very, very wrong. Standing on their hind legs and taking confident, awkward steps, they marched out of the trees with their heads craned to the sky. All of them emitting that horrible sound like their heads were being held under water as they screamed. It reverberated in my ears and made my skin break out in goosebumps. There were dozens of them, maybe a couple of hundred. Some were dragging a structure with them, others hauling a writhing shape I couldn't quite see. They congregated in a small huddle, the center of which was obscured from my vision. I looked over to Jojo's herd and saw the fear in their eyes, so many of them shaking with their teeth bared. A primal fear we humans have largely lost in the safety of being the dominant species. But this night showed me we were not as powerful as we think we are. As the huddle broke away and began walking towards the edge of their field, I saw what they had been huddling around. Jojo. He was still alive but barely moving and breathing. His eyes glazed over. When he began to come to, he started shrieking like a fawn. It was unnerving. They dragged him to the structure, a primitive set of steps, and hollowed out a hole in its center, coated in a thick substance on the sides, just large enough for Jojo to be thrown into. I watched these things, these not deer, use their front hooves to hoist him up into the hole, his screaming incessant the entire time. They stood around it, their necks cracked as they stared at the moon and shrieked. I looked up with them, wondering if what they sought was up there in the skies, a kind of primitive god for these creatures. I should have known better, of course. Whatever god these deers prayed to, it didn't reside up above. No, no, no. It lurked deep below. A low groan called out in response. It possessed the same blood-filled lungs these monstrosities had, and Jojo's deer huddled closer together at its roar. Jojo had stopped moving, his crying completely gone as the not deer fell silent and formed a circle around their altar, snorting in unison. It grew to a fever pitch before something began dragging Jojo from beneath, ripping at his limbs and pulling until a horrific squelch indicated the top had separated from the bottom. The hole spurted out blood and chunks of deer as the not deer celebrated, danced in the rain, and feasted on the pieces. One final roar rang out from the unseen creature. It shook the ground, and I felt my balance waver for just a moment, steadying myself on the car. I know I should have booked it out of there, but I was desperate to understand what I was seeing. Rationalizing that perhaps this was a bizarre art piece, maybe a protest from some sort of animal rights group, or even a bunch of edgy satanic teens. But the rational voice in my head grew very, very quiet when I grabbed my binoculars to look again. Every single one of them were staring up at me, emotionless, black eyes fixated on my position. I didn't wait any longer. I drove out of there at a breakneck pace, not looking at either side of the park on my exit, and near coming off the road with the lack of traction. As I got to the archway, my tire smashing against the grate, I'd inadvertently attracted the forest ranger on duty. He pulled me over and walked up to my window, a friendly smile on his face. "You know there's a speed limit there for a reason, right, son?" Yeah, I'm sorry. I got a little spooked is all," I smiled back. Nerve shot to hell, he raised an eyebrow. "You didn't break one of the rules now, did you?" "Oh no, I kept to them. It's just, well, Jojo got attacked by the eastern deer, and I don't think he's doing well. It was just a shock to take in. I figured telling a half-truth would be best. Couldn't exactly say what I thought I'd really seen, could I?" "That's so.
Well, they make their choices carefully. We don't know much, but we do not want to interfere. This is how it's always been. Animals have strange practices. You get how it is. But so long as you didn't look at them and they didn't look at you, you're fine. Deer remember faces after all. Thanks for visiting. Drive safe. He smiled again and tipped his hat before walking off to his station. My blood ran cold. I couldn't get those words out of my head the entire drive home. But so long as they didn't look at you, you're fine. I've not stepped outside my house since that night. I live in a remote part of the village, and while I enjoy my privacy, it's been a hotbed for strange noises and unsettling emotion. Everywhere I go in my home, I feel like I'm being watched by those same vacant eyes. What happens now? What happens to those they look at? I can't get their eyes out of my head, and I can't sleep. I can't sleep at all. This isn't going to end until I figure out what they want. I wish I had more for you. I wish I could tell you more. I wish I could tell you what the not deer were, what they prayed to, why they sacrificed, what the ranger knew. But there's so many unknowns that it makes my head spin. It's just like being deep in the woods. So many twists and turns, you never know which is the right path and which is the path to death. You never know what danger lurks behind every tree. I don't know what the deer are doing. I don't know what is going on at that park. But if you value your life, you'll stay far, far away from it and whatever monster they're praying to. There's something wrong with the deer on our nature reserve. They've started standing up.